I think the biggest challenge is also the biggest opportunity, as often happens. The biggest challenge is all the uncertainty and I feel like we have to timestamp to the day we're actually recording at the moment because things are changing so quickly.
Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast presented by Cornerstone International Alliance. I'm your host, Nick Olson. On this show, I get the opportunity to talk with the brightest minds in lower middle market M&A. Together, we discuss industry intelligence, deal management, shared successes, specialized expertise, and much more. If you serve the small to medium-sized business owner, this show will offer you tactics and insights you can use and implement now to become a master in M&A. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. My guest today is the founder of the Corporate Finance Network. She's a chartered accountant and award-winning SME corporate financier, a speaker, trainer, and frequent media commentator, and a new addition to the Cornerstone team. Please welcome my guest today, Kirsty McGregor. Kirsty, how are you doing today?
Hello, Nick. I'm really well, thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate you taking the time to join me on the show. I thought
Delighted.
It was timely because of you and helping Cornerstone International Alliance grow our footprint in Europe. I'm really excited to have you on the team, and I want you to tell our guests a little bit about what your thoughts are on that and what your role will be.
Oh, great. Well, really excited also. So thanks for inviting me on this to introduce myself. And we're going to talk about the UK market, I think, mostly today, but I'm going to be responsible for European business development. So hopefully bringing more members from Europe and the UK and Ireland into Cornerstone International, which will be fantastic, hopefully, for all of us.
Absolutely. And you founded the Corporate Finance Network, and its mission is, all things UK deal making, and it's a great network. That's how we connected. Tell us a little bit about what the Corporate Finance Network is, why you founded it, all the great things about it.
So I think probably for listeners to understand, I guess most of your listeners are not UK based. So I'll just backtrack and explain how the UK and Ireland market differs a little bit from the US in two main ways, really. Firstly, obviously, the population of the UK is smaller than the US, and also the business market is smaller. We have around 5.9 million businesses, but only 1.4 million of those have got employees. And I think that compares to around about 6 or 7 million in the States. So the number of deals that we do is less as well, and the deal value is also less. So that's what makes us a little bit different. But the other part that's mostly different is the way that we transact and advise on M&A transactions. UK accountancy firms, who you will call CPAs over in the States, offer a much broader range of services over here. So they are auditors, accountants, they do the payroll, they do the tax compliance, they do the tax planning, exit planning, all in under one roof, under one relationship. And that therefore means that translates as well into M&A. So probably 60% of the M&A deals in the UK are advised by the accountancy firm, like the CPA would be over there. 20% of them are probably the big four or investment banks, and 20% of them are independent M&A advisory firms or boutiques. So that makes a big difference. And when I was in an accountancy firm running deals and processes almost 30 years ago now, I could see that the demographic of the UK was probably like it is in the US, in that they're all aging. And I was recognizing that very few accountants knew how to advise on these transactions, and there was just going to be a real uptick. Accountants were still very much in the compliance field then. So about 20 years ago, I started training accountancy firms, and then that evolved into more than just a training course. They needed centralized resources, they needed a back office, they needed databases and researchers and deal origination and training and coaching and best practice. So that's what we do now. So it's very similar to CIA in a lot of respects. We have member firms that want to improve their efficiencies, make more connections, drive more deal origination. And between them, we advise on around 200 deals a year. But the big difference is they're also sitting there with a huge amount of business owner clients in their office, if you like. So we've got quite a luxury there, in that there's a lot of work there to farm.
Yeah, that's a great point because, independent boutique investment banks are looking for those business owners and spend a lot of time with accountancy firms, financial advisors, attorneys, coaches to develop those relationships. What have you seen, what have you seen with those firms having those built-in Kind of sounds like a business development arm for the M&A or corporate finance firm in general. But how has that helped them, you know, with clients and not having to go out and find their own as much, maybe?
Well, it does differ by firm, but it's not uncommon for 80% of the work in a corporate finance team within an accountancy firm to come from within the client base. But then you will have other corporate finance teams and accountants who are probably only doing 50% of their work from the internal client base. So it really depends on how much they have galvanized the rest of their colleagues to spot the opportunities, to take clients through that origination process, to either tee them up with exit planning and make sure that they know how they're going to sell and exit their business, or whether they build them and consider and encourage them to do more acquisitions, because that's definitely a big area where they can build work. So yeah, the firms, they do differ. All depends on how commercial the rest of the practice are. Some corporate finance teams find it easier to win work from outside, even though they've got these client
Right.
relationships there.
Yeah, it could go both ways for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
How has the UK lower to middle market, evolved over the past couple of years? What trends are you seeing maybe in terms of deal flow, valuations, and even buyer appetite?
Well, much like the rest of the world, there was a peak in 21 and 22 after 2020 COVID quietened everything down. So the volumes went up in 21 and 22. It then fell away a little bit in 23 and then began building up again. There's been a slight drop off last year in the UK in terms of deal volume. Not hugely material, but I think that was more because there was a lot of worry about tax changes here, capital gains tax, and I think that put a few business owners off thinking about an exit. So we have probably around 6,000 deals in the UK. 90% of them are less than 100 million EV, and there's always 60% that are less than 10 million deal value. So much smaller deal size over here. Deals, as you're finding, I think, as well, are taking much longer to complete. Due diligence and legal paperwork seems to be more intense and more drawn out. Earnouts are far more likely as the buyer now wants the vendor to share in some of the risk. But there's still a lot of good interest in good businesses, and we're not struggling to sell good quality businesses. In terms of sectors that are really popular, accountancy, legal, anything that's like human capital as well. So things like environment consultancies, ESG consultancies, or testing and compliance businesses. These that have got recurring income streams with systemized processes are really popular. There's a lot of deals happening in that space. And then any niche manufacturing companies who have got their own products and their own designs and their own IP, they're always very popular. And then the other big change really has in the last couple of years has been where we're finding the buyers from. In the past, because the deal size and these founding businesses were typically quite steady businesses, not high growth, private equity weren't really interested. It wasn't fast growing enough for private equity. But what has happened, as I think is happening over in the States as well, is that private equity are buying platform businesses and then happy to look at smaller deals as part of a roll up, a buy and build strategy. And the other thing is that has also come across from the States and is growing a lot in Europe is the entrepreneur through acquisition, the search funds, who are also looking for quite traditional businesses. And that's really exciting for us to see, because this is giving us now new potential buyer streams, which means that we're getting more deals completed.
What about just strategic buyers? Are they still pretty prevalent in a lot of, very still focused on growth that way?
Yeah, I think in certain sectors in particular, then you will find a strategic buyer to be more common. It's the place you go, first of all, to find your buyer population.
You and I have talked about this a handful of times offline, but what is the appetite in the UK for cross-border deals, whether it's other European countries, Asia Pacific, the States, Latin America? What does the appetite look like for selling, outside the borders?
So we have about 20% of the UK businesses sell overseas. 10% of those are typically in the US and some in Canada. We also have quite a lot of transactions with Sweden and other Scandinavian countries, but mostly Sweden. So yeah, 20% at the moment. So it's always been quite steady.
Any particular industries, maybe you don't know off the top of your head, that are more apt to be cross-border that you're seeing?
Well, we're starting to see it come into accountancy and legals, certainly from Sweden. I think there's just the tip of some US businesses as well coming in, private equity coming into professional services in the UK. So that I think is only going to increase. But there's been, a lot around manufacturing companies over here, and a lot of them have gone industrials. They've gone to Sweden. So that's been a really growth area of the last few years.
Are you seeing buyers in the UK looking to buy companies outside of your borders as well?
Not as often, not in the owner managed business space, and that's definitely something we want to see more of. Well, we want to see them make more acquisitions, full stop, but overseas as well. There's obviously more challenges, especially at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty around global trade and tariffs and where businesses are going to be located. So I think there's a lot of decisions on hold at the moment. When all that settles down, and we've definitely got we can see longer term, then hopefully we'll see more of that as well.
What are, I heard you say there are a couple of challenges in the UK, but what are the biggest opportunities you feel like um, for M&A or corporate finance in the UK? Like, what's the optimistic outview look in the next couple of years that our listeners should know about?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is also the biggest opportunity, as often happens. The biggest challenge is all the uncertainty and I feel like we have to timestamp to the day we're actually recording at the moment because things are changing so quickly. But there's so much, chaotic geo-economic, political things happening that this is yet another big shock that's going to affect our supply chain, our business owners in the UK, and they're absolutely weary. Business owners that have been through COVID, they went through the Ukraine fuel shock, then Brexit in the UK when we left the EU, and that affected all cross-border imports and exports and all sorts of things. And now the Middle East chaos, and then also the tech and AI revolution that's coming. A lot of business owners now are getting to the point where they just haven't got the stomach to keep adapting to all these changes and pivoting. So I think the opportunity is that there is going to be a huge spike in deals or wind ups. If the businesses aren't ready to sell, then they will just exit. And so exit planning is a massive opportunity. I think 90% of these businesses are not attractive yet to potential purchasers. So they need to restructure themselves and the way that they operate and just make sure that they look like what a buyer's looking for. There's going to be a huge shift in generational wealth one way or another. But very similar to the US, founders are incredibly nervous about employees and competitors finding out that they're on the market. So, operating a confidential process and showing that you've got proven expertise and a track record is a huge opportunity. And then, like I've said, more buy side. I'd love to see more buy side businesses. Less than 0.5% of businesses in the UK acquire another company. So we've got a good track record within the corporate finance network of a playbook that works to get more businesses thinking about M&A as a growth option, and then multiple arbitrage takes effect. The business is larger, the valuation multiple is also larger. So lots and lots of opportunities on the back of quite a chaotic environment.
You mentioned exit planning, and we've also talked about this a lot. What is the state of exit planning as a profession or as a thing in the UK? You said it is an area of opportunity for businesses to get them ready to sell. What does exit planning look like for you guys right now?
So we do very little of it formally. It's something that business owners talk about year in, year out, and yet very, very few of them to actually take any action. And that's partly because we don't really promote it very well in the UK as a product or as a profession. I know in the States, you have exit planners, you have SEPA, you have the EPI, and we don't have any of that over here yet. I'm on a mission to grow that. So yeah, there is massive opportunity because exit planning, if you speak to most business owners or you speak to most advisors, they will see exit planning as making sure the business is going to exit as tax efficiently as possible. So maybe looking at shareholdings or the corporate structure of the business and the group, and also thinking about the timeline. But what they're not doing really is looking operationally at the business, bringing in a different management team, making sure that customers are not so concentrated, increasing the margins, all the things that we know increase valuation. And they're not really concentrating on that as in a structured way, and that's really what we can do as our advisors are really trying to encourage more business owners to take that on board.
Yeah, and I think that's just another great referral source because and at least a lot of our firms in Cornerstone International Alliance identify, the opportunities for growth for a business owner, but work with an external third party to actually do the work. So referring them back and getting them back in a better situation, and I'll exit their company. And it's a win-win-win for everybody. Definitely something that can help, because a lot of times when you do evaluation and the business isn't ready, having someone to go and work on the business, as opposed to like, you're probably, you got this gap of where you want to be and where you need to be to sell your company. Good luck. I'll keep in touch every quarter. No, like, let's send them somewhere where they can go ahead and work on that for the next year or two, or however long it takes. And then they'll come back in a much better position, ready to sell and get what they need out of the business. This episode of the M&A Mastermind Podcast is powered by Cornerstone International Alliance, where leading M&A firms come together. As part of this international network, you get access to global opportunities, over 200 M&A experts, enhanced collaboration and knowledge sharing, and some of the best M&A tools and resources available, all to help you take your firm to the next level. Ready to join this exclusive network? Visit cornerstoneia.com/new member today.
And in the UK, that's probably the same accountancy firm that will do that. We don't have all these different professions like you have. So great opportunity there.
Yeah. I mean, it's staying with the business owner and it's working with them, on a more intimate level, so that you're building that trust with them, right? And if you can turn that into a sell side opportunity within the same firm, like there's just more revenue generating opportunities for you. Now, within the corporate finance network, they're all independent firms, if I'm correct. What value do you think your network brings to your members' clients?
Well, collaboration is obviously the key, and it helps everybody. There's no need to be as competitive nowadays. There is so much work out there. So collaboration makes a massive difference, whether they're sharing buyer intelligence or sector knowledge, or valuation multiples across very niche industries or practices that are common in certain sectors. We see that a lot. So it's a really well-established peer group. They know each other well. Some of them have known each other 15, 18 years. And crucially, that means they trust each other. But we're also see in practical terms where, because our accountants are often the auditor, the regulatory auditor, they are then conflicted in terms of acting on a sale, for example. So where there's sort of independence issues that won't allow them to act, they can refer that client to another member firms. The client is still getting really good quality advice with somebody that's experienced, and fees are reasonable, and the process is going to happen smoothly. So the client still gets the benefit of that. We see that as well with whether it's a management buyout and you've got two sides on the transaction, or an employee buyout, which was quite common over here. It's less common now because the tax regime has changed slightly, but we still see an employee ownership trust and employee buyouts. So firms are referring assignments between each other, so it helps them, but it also means that the client really is landing with an advisor who is trustworthy, experienced, reasonable, is going to actually get the deal done. But also it gives them access to market leading, global leading databases, resources, research, which an individual firm on their own may not be able to afford, but we're a kind of an umbrella organization and are able to negotiate database prices, subscriptions, and also put centralized research resources in place so the firms can, pay-as-you-go basis almost, and that helps their clients then, because they've got the equivalent of the big accountancy firms' resources, but at a local level, with national reach and best practice and proven practice as well.
That's a great segue into my next question, which was on technology and just data and how that, enhances, the collective value of the network, not only for the firms themselves, but also for the clients that they serve. What are you guys doing technology-wise? Because AI is a big thing, right? It's all the rage right now. It's all everybody talks about, and you can't run from it. We gotta embrace it. So what is your take on AI, the corporate finance industry, and how are you guys handling that? And where do you look, what are you providing as far as opportunities go for your members?
So I'm going to give you a bit of an exclusive here that's not been announced anywhere yet outside of the CFN, but I think you know what's coming. So we, in the Corporate Finance Network, I mean, let me backtrack a bit before I give you that exclusive, bit of a teaser. In terms of technology generally, databases are absolutely invaluable. And in the UK, we've actually got some really great private company deal databases. Mark to Market is the one that we work with, but there are others. And that means then in terms of valuation multiples, in terms of previous buyers in a sector, contacts, we can get some really great data. So we couldn't operate without them. Sourcing deals is not an issue for us. As you know, we've got the client base sat there. So, and they're also winning work easily from external sources. So we don't really use databases to source deals, but certainly once we're working on a case, then we're using it for precedent deals and industry averages and things. In terms then of AI, so like everyone else, we're using the large language models, but they're very limited to how we felt comfortable using them, mainly due to confidentiality of the data. So we've just signed in the last few weeks with Harvey, and Harvey AI is originally come out of San Francisco. It's originally a legal tool, a legal platform, and used very much by M&A lawyers. So a lot of the US and in the UK, leading law firms will have a Harvey subscription now, been around a few years. But PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, they did a joint venture with Harvey and they developed it for an M&A deals perspective, which means then that we have now got access to Harvey through PwC to work on it for deals. And the beauty of it is we can upload confidential data into a completely secure vault, which we can also use as a data room. And given the prompts, it's got so much more context and so much more value then that comes out in the quality of the output. So that is going to be a game changer for us. Then you've got to say, though, that there is still a human element. We still need to have a human in the loop. We have to make sure that we're dealing with human to humans in terms of deals. So AI is going to be invaluable and really help with efficiencies, but it's not going to replace the humans just yet.
That's everybody's fear, right? It's going to replace people's jobs, but hopefully it just makes us more efficient, like you said. Yeah, that's a I know you've been working on that for a long time, and an amazing opportunity for your network to be able to leverage such a great AI tool with now this new functionality that'll definitely increase and impact the value of what you guys are able to do. So
Absolutely.
Looking forward to see how that goes with your group. So, with technology and the resources that you're providing, the network is created really around, and like Cornerstone has the people, like you said, and, we have great people. You have them go through a process to make sure they're the right fit, as do we. And that really just talks to the culture and the collaboration and the abundance mindset of the groups. Do you have an example of, that you can share of a success story or something collaborative that a couple of your firms in your network did that maybe really improved a deal or a coaching opportunity, or working with a company on something that, just the collaboration of the group really impacted that opportunity?
Well, there's loads of instances of where they've been on opposite sides of the transaction, where, an employee buyout in an engineering sector last year, where our firm, one of our member firms, was acting for the vendor, and then they referred the trust, the employee ownership trust, who was the acquirer, into another member firm. And so they know that, the process is going to be looked after and everything's going to be smooth. So that happens regularly. And there's loads of instances of those, many, many times a year. But then I'll give you probably three others. Well, Harvey is one. We could not have taken on Harvey without it being as an umbrella organisation through the Corporate Finance Network, because the number of seats, the number of users, that their minimums were, none of our firms would be able to hit that. Obviously, joining Cornerstone International is another one. We've come in en masse as the Corporate Finance Network, so a lot of the member firms will be joining Cornerstone International, which will be great. And then another one, I suppose, is something that we worked on last year with the UK government. We have an agency over here called Innovate UK, and they needed some accountants and advisors to coach their potential investee businesses. So they put government money, public money, as a loan into some companies that are fast growing businesses. But the business owners, whilst they were typically great inventors and entrepreneurs and were able to really progress the tech, they didn't really have the compliance or the structures, the financial structures in place in the business to look after the money. And the government agencies were quite nervous. So they asked us to go and do some work for them over about 9 months, working with individual business owners, coaching them to improve their corporate governance. And so that could not have been done. There was something. Innovate UK were quite relieved to find us that there was a brand that was respected, that had all the expertise, and it wasn't one of the big four that just wouldn't have understood these small businesses. So so that worked really well. So there's been lots of occasions really where it's worked and the collaboration's really helped.
As we like to say, we are all stronger together than we are individually, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is the I know you've been a leading voice in supporting the next generation of corporate finance professionals in the UK. What does that talent development look like, and how's that evolving in your market?
Yeah, I still think I'm one of those. I forget that I've been in the profession for 30 years. And I still feel like I'm the youngest person in the room, but I'm really not. So I've always championed the younger team members coming into the departments, and I've had a Rising Stars program running for 15 years at least, and really proud to say that more than half of those have actually progressed in their careers, and they're either partners and directors themselves now. So that's been fantastic. I've loved to see that. But I think going forward, we are really going to have to shift how we train our next generation of M&A advisors, because AI is going to completely revolutionize the work that we need to do, and what we used to call the grunt work, the laborious work, is going to be gone. So that's how your trainees in your M&A departments, your new biz, would have learned. So we're going to have to shift this, and we're seeing this across all of accountancy, not just in A. And I think the firms that are switched on will recognise that they can really front load the technical skill training, and that is going to be compressed and done a lot quicker. And to allow them more time then to learn the more commercial skills or the human skills or the deal making skills much sooner than they normally would in their career. So I think we're really going to speed up the progression, which is good, because capacity has always been the problem in our practices. It's not getting the work, it's getting the work done that is the issue. So we recruit really bright youngsters, out of university, college, or wherever, and they are capable of learning quicker than we have taught them in the past. So there's no need to give them, to slow that down now. I think we can really be hopeful that we can speed up the ability of these youngsters to really come into their own. And I've seen this. We've got some brilliant young team members in some of our member firms, and they are just progressing so fast. So give them the confidence, give them the training, give them the supporting resources, and they will fly for you.
Amazing. Yeah, it is a different world than when I was right out of college, that's for sure. What would you say to a US M&A advisor who's got a deal that there might be some appetite or buyers in the UK? Any advice, any things they should know about when dealing, in the UK from the US on an opportunity?
Well, a lot of the things are similar in that, most of our sellers are probably first-time sellers. They probably don't have the understanding of the process or how the business is valued and the interrogation they're likely to be put through on diligence. So that's very similar. They're also wanting to protect their legacy potentially, or ensuring their employees are looked after, or some just want to cut and run and get their money in the bank. All of them are extremely worried about their competitors or employees finding out. And also, some of them are just not ready personally. Their whole life is wrapped up in being a business owner, an employer, maybe a figurehead in their community or in their industry sector. They're putting their baby up for sale, or what was it? Scott says, put it up for adoption, and moving to just transitioning into retirement can be really scary for them. So you do see the same wobbles and shocks regularly when they're getting towards the end of a deal and they realize this deal is actually going to happen. Sometimes they'll make a big song and dance about a really small issue, and it's really because they're desperate to just back out. So all of that is still absolutely the same. Where I think it's a little bit different is that we are a much smaller country than the US. So don't look at miles or traveling time and think it's, somewhere from Manchester to Birmingham, for example, might take 2 hours to drive. That's not local. They don't see that as local. So a business that's got an office in Manchester will not have employees travelling between the Manchester and the Birmingham offices, on a daily basis. So there's a slight difference in how they perceive geography. And the other thing is, don't just reach out on email to a founder or a business owner and think it's going to get through to that business owner. It might be their PA or their office manager picks it up, and in that case, they'll be furious that someone's talking about selling, even if that business owner is 73 years old and quite clearly something has got to happen at some point. They do not want their staff finding out, and you might have just ruined any chance of building that trust back. So work through advisors wherever possible. Be aware that geography is different. Be aware that size is different. And like I say, our deals are smaller, our businesses are smaller, our population's smaller. But still lots of profits to be made.
What kind of offshoot of that, and great advice and great insight. What does the next 12 to 24 months look like? If you can take out your crystal ball and tell us, we won't hold you to it, but in your best guess, what is the next, in the corporate finance space, in your market, what does the next 12 to 24 months look like?
So I think let's go for three different things that are coming up. Firstly, huge uptick in business owners wanting to exit. I think so many of them have just reached the end of their tether, as we say. They are thinking, that's it, I've got to get out now. So, and due to their age, they're not going to want to carry on much longer. In the UK, we've really got to then get into exit planning a lot more, because it's imperative that we protect the employers in our country. 50% of our private sector employment are in businesses with less than 50 staff. And so if we do not transition these businesses to new ownership, then they'll close down and we'll lose that employment in that local community. And that's going to just devastate our economy and the opportunities for our youth. So that's something that we've really got to work on in this country. What else is coming up? The next 12 months, 24 months, I'm starting to look at different sectors as well now. There's going to be more sectors starting to consolidate and have an increase of volume of deals, typically where private equity money or a search fund ETA is buying a platform and then looking to buy and build. So spotting which sectors are at the start of that curve is going to be where the winners are, and know then that the business and the owners are ready to hit the market at the right time, not when that curve has passed, is going to be a great thing to be able to do. And then, as the reason why we've joined Cornerstone International Alliance is that internationally, I think cross-border deals are only going to grow in popularity. But, they worry about cyber threats. So, they're not going to respond well to emails from people they don't know. British business owners are not easily fooled. They're typically very cynical. So human relationships are going to be absolutely key. So look, anybody out there that's looking to have businesses buy in the UK, come and talk to me. Let me know what opportunities you've got. We can share our opportunities with you. And let's see if we can build up some matches. So, the value of human relationships, as much as tech and AI is on a rampage now, human relationships are going to be crucial in the longer term still.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. Appreciate that insight. Kirsty, thanks for joining. This has been amazing. You gave us a great, viewpoint into the UK market. Excited to work with you in your network and what that looks like in the future for both organizations. Where can our listeners find you, learn more about the great work that you guys are doing at the Corporate Finance Network, and how can they connect with you?
So send me a message via the website. Our URL is the CFN, the Corporate Finance Network, so thecfn.org.uk. Get me on LinkedIn, Kirsty McGregor. I'll send the links to Nick for the show notes. Make sure you get the spelling right, or just drop me an email, info@thecfn.org.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kirsty, for joining here today. That's all we have for this episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast. Make sure to like, share, and comment on this episode and pass it on to anybody you think might benefit. Make sure to subscribe wherever you find podcasts. Get that notification every Thursday morning when we launch a new episode to never miss an episode in the future. And, tune in and looking forward to bringing you more great guests in the future. But appreciate you all listening each and every week. Until next time, everybody, take care.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the M&A Mastermind podcast, and a special thank you to our presenting sponsor, Cornerstone International Alliance. If you enjoyed today's discussion, don't forget to like, share, and comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. We'll be back next week with more insights, strategies, and real-life experiences to help you take your M&A game to the next level.